Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Independence Center's ADA Celebrating Progress in the Pikes Peak Region Luncheon. I'm your MC today, John Carroll. I want to welcome you all here. This is the third annual luncheon celebrating the anniversary of the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. This year is extra special. We're also celebrating the 30-year anniversary of the Independence Center's work in and around Colorado Springs. How cool is that? Let's also give a big round of applause to A Positive Note, courtesy of the Colorado Springs Conservatory. I think their music really set the tone for today's luncheon. At this time, we'd like to acknowledge all the sponsors who've made this event possible. Now, starting off, first of all, we'd like to invite Mary Spillane from Comcast to accept a gift from the Independence Center for being a principal sponsor. Mary, if you would come on up stage, please.
Thank you so much.
It's all good. In addition, we'd like to thank our other sponsors, including our promoting sponsors, Sprint Relay and Rocky Mountain Healthcare Services, our premier sponsors, Hoff and Lee Commercial Real Estate, First Bank, Cascade Investment Group, Kaiser Permanente, Central Bank Corp., and Denver Management Advisors, Incorporated. This event is also supported by our table sponsors, Z-Trip, RTA Architects, Silver Key, Meeting the Challenge, UC Health Memorial Hospital, Amblicab, Health South, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Wells Fargo Advisors, Nunn Construction, the ARC, Pikes Peak Region, and Next Day Access Colorado. And we also want to acknowledge the elected officials who are with us here today, according to my script here, and I see him right there. The Mayor of Colorado Springs, John Suthers. Any members of the Colorado Springs City Council in attendance with us today? Mayor of Manitou Springs, Nicole Nicoletta, and any other elected officials in attendance. Now, let's have one big round of applause for our sponsors and elected officials. Appreciate you joining us today for this special event. The Americans with Disabilities Act was signed into law 27 years ago. Today, we're here to celebrate its passage. On July 26, 1990, George H.W. Bush signed the ADA into law, establishing a federal mandate to eliminate discrimination against people with disabilities. Today, we're here to honor that mandate and highlight the progress we've made here in the Pikes Peak region in regards to the ADA. Also, the Independence Center is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. Today, we'll also highlight the progress that the IC has made as a nonprofit organization. Thanks to everyone here for taking the time out of your busy day to support disability rights on both of these important anniversaries. Now, would you please take a moment while you're eating and complete the contact form located in the envelopes on your table. At the end of our luncheon, you can drop the envelopes off at the registration tables out front, and each person will receive a gift bag, courtesy of Comcast, the Independence Center, Hoff and Lee, Rocky Mountain Healthcare Services, and First Bank. And while lunch is coming around now, it's my pleasure to introduce the CEO of the Independence Center, Patricia Yeager. Patricia's career encompasses a lifetime of work in public policy, disability education, services, and advocacy. In the 1980s, Patricia was an appointee of Denver's then-mayor Federico Pena to the Commission for People with Disabilities. Patricia has a bachelor's in education from Marshall University, a master's in rehabilitation counseling from West Virginia University, and a doctorate in human rehabilitation from the University of Northern Colorado. Please give a warm welcome to Patricia Yeager.
It is great to see this huge crowd here today celebrating such an important date. It was 3 years ago that the Independence Center first started our ADA celebration luncheon, and each year it just seems to get bigger and better. 27 years ago, before the ADA, people with disabilities faced discrimination in employment, limited access to transportation, and unthinkable lack of access to public and commercial buildings. Community life is getting better for all of us who have disabilities, but there's still lots to be done. As we continue this march towards realizing the ultimate goal of access for everyone, it is really time for us to stop and recognize those who have helped lead the way in our community. So in the spirit of this, I'm explaining this year's presentation. Instead of having a single presenter as we have done in the past, we decided to do things a little differently. We, advocates, home health providers, and other employees from the Independence Center will discuss stories about the people whom we've impacted and how the center has helped to make the ADA come alive in the Pikes Peak region. The first speaker from our home health division is Amber.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amber Turner, and I work at the home health at the Independence Center as a home health liaison. I think when most people hear the name, the Independence Center, they think of the work that we do related to independent living, like how we help people with disabilities leave nursing homes and rejoin their community, or they think of the peer support classes that we provide to our customers. But the fact is that the Independence Center is an adaptable, nonprofit organization that uses a variety of approaches to help people with disabilities live a more independent life. One of the ways that we've done this is through the work of the home health department. Today, I'd like to tell you a story that personifies the meaningful work that we do and demonstrates the caring nature of our home health team. At the IC, we now have a program that's a result of a recently passed law in the Colorado legislature that allows family members to become paid caregivers. At the IC, this past spring, we had the great pleasure of meeting Miss Masa Fika over here in the corner. Masa and her... Masa and her family were refugees from Africa. Her grandson, Charles, was born with a variety of health challenges that make it so he needs a caregiver around the clock. These ailments weren't even apparent until they came to the United States. He's unable to communicate his needs or move his arms and legs. He relies on a feeding tube for nutrition and requires precisely timed medications throughout the day. Masa and the family has learned what Charles needs when he needs it based on his facial expressions, sounds, and eye movements. Ensuring that Charles is properly cared for is a difficult task, but Masa loves him with all her heart, and she works tirelessly to make sure that he has everything he needs to live the life that she feels like he deserves. When Masa first came to the Independence Center, she was working 2 full-time jobs to make ends meet. She would get up at 5 in the morning, work until midday, get an hour and a half off, and then go to a different job where she would work until midnight. During this time, nursing aides would stay with Charles. Masa has got to be one of the hardest working people I have ever met. Masa heard about the Independence Center program from Charles' case manager, and with the help from Peggy, the family's liaison, who's actually here today as well with Masa, she contacted the Independence Center, and we were able to determine that the substantial amount of care that Charles required easily qualified Masa to become a full-time paid caregiver. Masa made the difficult decision to quit both of her jobs, go through the orientation process, and become Charles's primary caregiver. Today, we believe that she loves being able to stay home and provide Charles with the level of care he deserves. The impact that the Independence Center's home health program has had on Masa and Charles is immense. She is able to spend quality time with Charles that she wasn't before. She tells me that his eyes just light up when he sees her. We believe she lives with much less stress, and you can see the difference in her face when we speak. And between the income from being a paid caregiver and employee of the Independent Center, including the tax breaks she gets from the state of Colorado for being a stay-at-home caregiver, she's pretty much making what she was when she was working 2 full-time jobs. Though Moss's story isn't typical, what is typical is the importance that the home health department puts on each and every one of our clients. So I'd ask in the future, when you think about the Independent Center, don't forget about the home health department.
Thanks, Amber. The Home Health Department is what started us 30 years ago this year. So this is our 30th anniversary, and we are so pleased to be sharing it with all of you. The Home health is such an important program because it allows people to live in the community with families and not in nursing homes, and it's a critical part of what we do. Sometimes thriving in the community means barriers have to be removed. Often individuals are able to remove those barriers they face themselves through self-advocacy, but other times groups are needed to come together and remedy the problem. This is our next story, how the IC and El Paso County came together to ensure that people with disabilities had equal access to voting.
Hi everyone, I'm Courtney Stone, and I am the Community Organizing Manager at the Independent Center. Excuse me, let me make sure.
Oh, I think that's going to make it all better. I'm Courtney Stone, and I'm a Community Organizing Manager at the Independent Center. 30 years of existence is an exciting thing to celebrate. I know I'm doing it in my personal life this year, and it's somewhat less exciting. But I want to talk about a 30 number that's a little less celebratory. And that's the 30% of people with disabilities that experienced difficulties voting in the 2012 election. Compared to just 8% of people without disabilities, people with disabilities faced additional barriers to being able to access the polls. That could look like getting transportation to the polling place. It could look like having difficulty getting inside once they get there, or potentially having the ballot accessible in the language that they choose. So with that 30% number in mind, in February of 2016, I reached out to the El Paso County elections team, and I offered to provide disability etiquette training to their 250 election judges. Not only is it one of the favorite parts of my job, it also seems like a proactive way to address some of those challenges at the polls. It was in that conversation that we began discussing the idea of using the Independent Center as a highly accessible polling place for people with disabilities in the November 2016 election. For those that don't know, our facility is specifically designed to be accessible, from the width of the doors and hallways to video phones for the deaf, to high contrast flooring for those with low vision to be able to navigate independently. The last time the U.S. Government Office of Accountability studied this in 2008, they found that only 30%, you might see a theme here, only 30% of polling places across the country had no barriers for people with disabilities. We thought we could do better in El Paso County. So the El Paso County elections team organized a hands-on voter training so people with disabilities could interact with the voting machines before the crush of the day of the election. They provided ASL interpretation both days that we were open as a polling place. Our own Tim Ashley, who you'll meet here in just a second, went and surveyed for ADA accessibility with the city's coordinator all 25 other polling locations across the county to make sure that 100% of them were ADA compliant and as inclusive as they could be. Our entire staff rallied together to make sure that our polling place was safe, accessible, and welcoming. From our facilities and security team that coordinated the impacts on the building and our services, to volunteers that we have in the room right now that served as guides and greeters for voters. People actually said they felt more positive and happier after leaving our facility and voting, which may not be all of our experiences. Matthew Ruggles, with our Deaf Services Department, coordinated with the Colorado School for the Deaf and Blind to bring out high school students to vote for their first time. One of them said he felt like a star after being interviewed by the media about his experience with voting independently. As someone that truly believes in how meaningful it is to have the right to vote, the atmosphere in the Independence Center last November was electric. We had people lined up for at least short periods of time through both days that we were open as a polling place. And by the end of this experience, we had had 700 people cast their ballots at our facility. Yeah, thank you. So, in the spirit of our 30-year anniversary, I have one last question for you, and that's about the number of voters, of eligible voters, who turned out for our last municipal election this past April, just a few months ago. Can any of you guess how many eligible voters turned out to vote this past April? 30. Only 30%, just like our 30-year anniversary, 30% of eligible voters turned in their ballots this past April. So while the Independence Center can commit to working towards making sure there are 0 barriers for people with disabilities in the voting process, we can commit to making sure that 100% of our polling places in our county and the outlying counties are accessible for people with disabilities. We need all of you to join us in changing that 30% turnout number. It is a beautiful thing to be able to celebrate 30 years of existence as an organization, but if you come out and join us on November 6th and 7th to drop your ballot off for us, we think we can do better than 30% turnout in our November race. Thank you so much for joining us and being here. Take care.
Thanks, Courtney. Voting is such a fundamental part of civic engagement. It is very important that all of us vote, and now through this partnership, we can all vote. Next, we're going to hear several stories from our non-residential Center for Independent Living, which is required to offer 5 core services, but actually we provide around a dozen that help people become independent. Each story will touch on several services that we provide. The first one is about a young man who recreated his life through a support group and assistive technology. Are you turned on?
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Hi, I'm Tim Ashley. I'm the peer support coordinator at the Independence Center, and I can't tell you what an honor it is to get up here and share a story. I hear and see so many good things happening at the Independence Center every day, and this is just one story. I could sit here for hours and bore you to death with other stories, but this one's really special. So this is Anthony Wilkins, and when Anthony first came to the Independence Center, he was looking for an outlet. He was looking for something to do with his life. He was an avid outdoorsman. He liked to fish. He liked to hunt. He liked to swim. And unfortunately, a few years back, he was in a diving accident in Hawaii and left him paralyzed from the neck down. So unable to use his hands, his arms, his legs, he couldn't do the things he did before. Tony went through a lot of depression, a lot of isolation. As you can imagine, it was hard for him to get around, and he really lost interest in interacting with people for quite a while. So a couple of years ago, we started a group called the Spinal Cord Injury Group for people who had spinal cord injuries, and for short, I'll say SCI from now on. But the SCI group, we started it up to give people with spinal cord injuries an outlet, to give them a reason to get out of their home and start interacting with others. It was also a great opportunity to share stories, share resources, share barriers that you've overcome, and maybe help others overcome those same barriers, or at least give them ideas. And Tony was the first one to sign up for that group, the very first one. A little while after the group started, Tony came up to me and said one of his goals was he wanted to go to college. So I met him at Pikes Peak Community College, and we got him enrolled in school, got him set up with OASIS and the Disability Union, was all set to go. Well, about a month before school started, Tony realized that he wasn't going to be able to use a computer. He wasn't going to be able to take his own notes. And he didn't want anybody doing it for him. This was an independent young man here. So he gave up on the college idea. Again, kind of fell back into slight depression. Not real bad. But anyway, one of the things with the SCI group is we had some grant money where we could purchase equipment for people, equipment to make them more independent. Tony, great self-advocate, did his own research and came up to me and said, "Have you ever heard of the joust?" No, what's a joust? I picture these people on horses knocking each other out. Anyway, the joust is a computer program that Tony is able to operate just like he does with his power chair. So I got with our IT specialists at the Independence Center, AJ, and together we found the program online. And within a week, we had it ordered and it was on the way to Tony. $1,550 is nothing compared to the independence that it's given Tony. Since he has the joust, he's able to navigate the computer by himself. So, guess what? He's enrolled in college, and he's doing online classes, and he's interacting with people. And not only that, but the social aspect of the group. Tony went to an Air Force football game with me. He went to Fishing Has No Boundaries. He's been to concerts like Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Last month, he went to Fishing Has No Boundaries again. And next month, he's going on a 3-day camping trip, 3-day, 2-night camping trip with my group. So, so I called Tony a couple weeks ago because I hadn't heard from him because he's so independent now. He doesn't need me anymore, right? And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Hey, I just got back from the Great Wall of China." I'm like, what? So with virtual reality and his joust, he was able to actually be at the Great Wall of China, and that was awesome. So anyway, Tony, through the group and through his new equipment, the joust, he was able to find the independence he was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of these days, I expect them to come with an idea to go skydiving, and I'll have to talk to our insurance people about how do we ensure that when the spinal cord injury group goes skydiving, because they are quite an adventurous group. Thanks, Tim. It's amazing what recreation can do to reconnect people to their passion, and then once they get assistive technology, they are out of here. They're on to their lives. Switching subjects a little bit here, the Independence Center's reach in El Paso County is extensive, but the combined catchment area for our Home Health Division, Center for Independent Living, and Veterans Program actually reaches across 17 counties. This past year alone, we've increased our outreach to these counties by 880%. Here's one story of a veteran in an outlying county who transformed his life through many of the services that we offer and who is now giving back to others.
Hello, my name is Frances Dorrance. I am the outreach coordinator for the Independence Center. For people with disabilities, the lack of public transportation and disability-related services in rural areas can make everyday life difficult, if not impossible. One person who is all too familiar with this is Ross Huddleston, and he's back there. Ross lives in Calhan, and he couldn't imagine leaving his beloved home on the plains for a life in the city, even if things might be easier. Ross, a veteran of Vietnam and a proud member of his community, has Parkinson's disease. When I first met Ross, his Parkinson's-related symptoms were really starting to affect his ability to get around. Since he lacked reliable transportation, Ross's only option to get from point A to point B was walking through the rough terrain, even in the town limits of Calhan, with the wind and icy weather. For someone with Parkinson's, this task was nearly impossible. Ross walked to where he needed to go, but not without showing up to his destination looking a bit disheveled from the elements of his walk. Just last year, Ross utilized the Independent Center's independent living services at the Outreach Center in Calhan, as well as the VIC, or Veteran in Charge program, and through these services, he has been able to increase his independence and remove barriers that his disability had presented. I was watching a television special one day on how fitness, especially bicycle riding, can aid in battling the effects of Parkinson's. The study showed that bicycle riding lessens tremors and helps to control the gait. I presented this study to Ross and the idea of him getting a bicycle, or in his case, a trike. We were able to connect with another department at the Independence Center, Assistive Technology, headed up by Paul Spotts. Paul helped us to secure grant funding through the Independence Center. Ross was professionally fitted for the bike, and we were able to purchase the adaptive tricycle with electric motor through Biketricity. The three-wheel design of the trike helps Ross to maintain his balance, and the motor helps him to supplement his pedaling and can take over when he gets tired. Since getting Ross his trike, his newfound mobility has freed him. As Ross said, when I go someplace now, it doesn't take me a half hour to get there. Since we overcame this barrier, we were able to focus on other needs that Ross needed in his home.
Thank you, Fran. Hello, everyone. I'm Jillian Godfrey and a veteran coach at the IC. Because of his veteran status, Fran referred Ross to the Independence Center's Veteran in Charge, or VIC, program. If you aren't familiar with VIC, the model is a progressive change in the way veterans are receiving health care services in their homes and communities to promote their independence while directing their own care. VIC is a Veterans Administration, or VA-funded program that provides long-term supports and services to veterans who have a disability. The program serves eligible veterans of any age who need assistance with everyday tasks such as transportation, hygienic care, lawn maintenance, and medications. Most importantly, the veteran or their appointed representative are the ones that are making the vital decisions regarding the services that they receive based on an individualized plan that's developed between themselves and their coach, and that's me. Through the VIC program, Ross has gained access to resources and taken control over his own care. With the help of caregivers paid for with funds through VIC, Ross has hired people that he trusts to help out with everyday tasks to maintain his independence and remain living in the community. Since meeting Ross, I have seen him make changes in his life that may have not been possible before getting the help that he needed. I've always said you can never have too many resources or people helping you in your corner. And Ross, having the help that he needs has been the difference between surviving and thriving. And I know that he's happy to be thriving again. Because of Ross's interest, determination, and desire. Sorry, guys. I'll talk louder. Because of Ross's interest, determination, and desire to get the most out of his experience at the IC, Ross has gone from working on his own independence to helping others work towards theirs. Today, Ross is a peer mentor at the Independence Center. He helps other people with disabilities, shares his experiences, and helps provide support for their goals to become more independent. Thank you. Thank you, Ross.
Ross is also one of our newest members of the IC Fund committee. We have a fund where we give funding away, about $50,000 every year, to agencies in town that are working with people with disabilities. The whole committee is made up of people with disabilities, and Ross is one of them. So, whether it's the Veterans in Charge program, which happens to be the largest program of its kind in Colorado, or providing home health to the VA, to veterans through the VA, we are excited about finally offering services to veterans in our community. But Ross isn't the only one whose determination has proved to be an asset to the Independence Center and the people we serve. Our last story is about Charlene, and here to help her tell the story is the IC's Letitia Kearney to introduce her.
Hello, everyone. My name is Letitia Kearney, and I'm a member of the Community Transition Services, or CTS, department at the Independence Center. In CTS, we work with individuals currently residing in a nursing facility. We help them transition back into the community to regain their independence. I have had the pleasure of working with Ms. Charlene Youngblood as a participant of the CTS program and now as a colleague. She will now share her story.
Hi, my name is Charlene, and I'd like to tell you about my story and my journey to independence. I've not always needed a wheelchair to get around. 8 years ago, I had full use of my legs, drove a car, had a job as a preschool teacher, a happy marriage of 30 years, and our children were off to college. A pretty much average life. And quickly, without warning, all that changed. One day, a case of what I thought was only sciatica turned extremely serious. From the time the pain set in to about 5 weeks later, I went from independence to being totally unable to stand, sit, or even roll over. For 6 months, I lived on the couch, being waited on totally for all my needs by my husband and my mother. Over time, I was able to transfer to a wheelchair, which made it possible for me to move around the house and start taking care of myself again. During all this time, my left leg lost the ability to straighten, and it stayed that way until just recently, about 7 years. My husband had built a ramp so that I could eventually get outside and even into my van and drive. I went back to teaching at the preschool that I had started at my church about 1 year. Then one night, the pain flared up, and all my original pain was back. And I went into the hospital. After 5 weeks in the hospital and still no diagnosis and no idea of how to move ahead, I went to a nursing home. I was terrified, but I had no choice. Over the next several months in the nursing home, I began to get into a wheelchair again and kept improving. My husband came to see me every night, and things were beginning to look promising again. It would not be long before I'd be released to go home. And then one morning, I received terrible news. My husband had passed away from carbon monoxide poisoning in our home. I was devastated. I'd lost the use of my legs, my job, my home, now my husband, and my independence. At that darkest point in my life, I had no hope and no idea what was to become of me. Living in a nursing home was horrible. I had completely lost my sense of self-worth and the self-respect that I once had. There is no privacy, and you're told what to do all the time. They tell you what to eat, when to eat, and pretty much make all the decisions for you. You're lucky to get a shower once or twice a week if there's a staff member available. When I was in the nursing home, I did survive, but I wouldn't call it living. Then someone in the nursing home said, "Why don't you call the Independence Center and find out about getting back into the community?" I never thought that would be possible since I had nowhere to go. I made the call, and that is when my life turned around. The Independence Center walked me through all the steps necessary for my transition. It took about 14 months waiting for an accessible apartment, but finally my big day came. With the help of the Independence Center staff in the CTS program, I moved into my own apartment, ready to start my new life. Can't imagine how I felt. I was so excited and so nervous. I'd never lived alone before. The Independence Center helped me get set up with doctors, city bus, food stamps, and all the services that I needed to get started on my way back to my independence. I even started taking a nutrition class at the Independence Center, which gave me a lot of information for cooking healthy and meal planning. After moving into my apartment, I came across several obstacles on my way to the bus stop. The Independence Center advocated on my behalf to have the sidewalks brought to compliance with the ADA, Eventually, the city came out, added a few curb cuts, and finally fixed the sidewalks around my neighborhood to make it possible for me to get to the bus stop safely. Not long after my transition, I was offered a job at the Independence Center, working as a peer mentor in the CTS program with the people that had helped me with my transition. I was shocked, never thought I would have a job again. I was so honored that they wanted me to help with other people in nursing homes making the transition into the community, so I accepted the position. Now I can help others going through that uncertain, stressful time when they do not know what their future holds. And I'm still involved with the nutrition classes, and I can pass that information on to the consumers that I work with. I've loved every minute I am able to help people make their transition a little easier. And I'm so grateful that I have this opportunity to help others get back to the independence that they all deserve. Thank you.
This story never fails to make me choke up. It reminds me how close we all live to the possibility of acquiring a disability at any moment. But with the people and the services of the IC community, anyone can choose to reconstruct a new life around that disability. Please join me in thanking the people who have shared their stories today. My staff know me well. There's a box of tissues underneath the podium here. Oh, my. Well, I hope that you can see that what really matters to us here is making a difference for people with disabilities in and around the Pikes Peak region. And through the Americans with Disabilities Act, all this is possible. The stories you have just heard represent but a small sample of the work we do every day. I am so proud of the great work we do, the wonderful, empowered staff and volunteers who make all of this possible. So now, I'd like to introduce our volunteer-in-chief, the Independence Center Board Chair, Drew Wills.
Hello, you all. Is this on? Okay. Each year, the Independence Center presents awards at our annual event. At the Independence Center, we serve all people with disabilities. There are 5 general categories of disabilities: deaf and hard of hearing, cognitive, blindness and low vision, mental health, and physical. Each award will represent an entity that has significantly impacted the Pikes Peak region by furthering the ADA. We're honored to have Colorado Springs Mayor John Suthers here today. Under his leadership, the city has added or retrofitted over 1,700 curb ramps, provided over 300,000 trips through Metro Mobility, and provided recreational activities to over 17,000 people through the Park Department's Therapeutic Recreation Program. Please join me in welcoming Mayor John Suthers to present these awards.
Thanks so much, Drew, and thanks to the Independence Center for the invitation to join you today. I'm inspired by the work that you do. Ladies and gentlemen, the city and the Pikes Peak region as a whole are making great headway in making our services and activities accessible to all people. As one example, as Drew indicated, we've greatly increased the number of ADA-compliant sidewalks and pedestrian ramps throughout Colorado Springs. For instance, in 2016, we set a record. We built or reconstructed over 1,000 pedestrian ramps in Colorado Springs alone. This is in part due to our community's commitment to ballot measure 2C, which is funding road improvements. As many of you may or may not know, the federal law requires that whenever we do any improvement to a roadway, we have to bring all the accompanying
curb and sidewalk into compliance with the ADA. Therefore, 2C has helped us become a more accessible city for all our residents. I'm pleased to report that at the end of the first quarter of this year, 2017, through 2C tax revenues alone, we've added another 20 new pedestrian ramps, retrofitted well over 100 existing ramps to make them ADA compliant. We've also poured concrete for more than 43,000 square feet of new or improved sidewalk. Not long ago, based on need, we decided to invest heavily in our community centers. In 2015, we completely refurbished the Deerfield Community Center to make it accessible. In 2016, we invested over $300,000 to make Meadows Community Center ADA compliant. This year, over $500,000 has been allocated to Hillside and another $100,000 to Westside to begin work on those facilities. Also, another $100,000 has been allocated to the Colorado Springs Police Department to get the Police Operations Center downtown fully ADA accessible. We've also worked on ensuring that everyone can communicate with their city. Recently, we invested in a comprehensive software package to help us ensure website compliance and help us become more accessible and responsive to people who need the services of the City of Colorado Springs. We've also added another hearing loop at the Gold Hill Police Station Community Room. Additionally, we've almost completed the comprehensive self-evaluation of all our park and recreational facilities. This self-evaluation will help the city to further plan and direct the resources needed to make our funding decisions. Creating a city and region where people have freedom to participate in our society through improved accessibility is important to our community. And the Independence Center has really led the way in helping us all achieve this goal. We appreciate their support and counsel in helping us identify and address program, transportation, and infrastructure needs to help increase opportunities for all. Together, we will continue to build upon our progress to create a community that provides optimal access to everything that makes for a full and productive life as a citizen of Colorado Springs and the Pikes Peak region as a whole. Thank you very much. Now it's my responsibility to give out some awards. And according to the script, award winners are lined up at the bottom of the stage. Okay. Courtney's taking care of that. So I'm going to go ahead and recognize these award winners. While there are many individuals and organizations progressing the Americans with Disabilities Act in the Pikes Peak region, the first award will go to the entity that has had a far-reaching impact on the deaf and hard of hearing community. I'd like to call Ben Bills, Public Information Officer of the El Paso Teller County 911 Authority, to the stage. Ben, along with others at the El Paso Teller County 911 Authority and the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Department at the Independence Center, worked tirelessly to get the Text to 911 program up and running. The thought of not being able to summon help in case of an emergency is unthinkable for someone within the hearing community. But for the people in the deaf and hard of hearing community, that was reality until Text to 911 was implemented. Text to 911 has made it possible for the deaf and hard of hearing community to call for emergency services such as police and emergency medical services with the standard text system that each of us have on our cell phones. This is a huge accomplishment and expands a desperately needed service to the deaf and hard of hearing community. I am honored to help give this award to Ben. Next, I'd like to call Beth Schaffner. Director of the RSA Shift Transition Project at Peak Parent Center. Peak is Colorado's federally designated parent training and information center and provides services and information to parents and youth with disabilities. Though Peak works with a full range of people with disabilities, today Peak Parents is receiving this award for their work related to children with cognitive disabilities. Not long ago, Peak Parent Center and the Independence Center collaborated on a program called Take Charge. The 5-session course was designed to teach youth with disabilities and their parents how to advocate for themselves, develop knowledge and skills to further their independence, and locate much-needed resources. Participants gained information and support to determine a career path, participate in post-secondary education, and to develop a sense of self-reliance and self-worth. Graduates of the course completed their individual portfolios, and by the end of the program, several participants had already found employment. For their dedication to the ADA and people with disabilities in the Pikes Peak region, we are grateful for Peak Parents' meaningful work. Join me in congratulating Beth. Got it? Okay. Now I'd like to call Lisa Van Dam, orientation and mobility instructor at the Colorado School for the Deaf and Blind, School for the Blind. The Colorado School for the Deaf and Blind not only provides education in self-advocacy and community service for their students, but also offers training that teaches our community about blind culture and issues facing the blindness and low vision community. CSDB's student body provides training on human guide technique and white cane use at places such as police departments, fire departments, the United States Air Force Academy, the Fine Arts Center, and even Chapel Hills Mall for their security officers. The Independence Center has had the privilege to work with CSDB on various projects over the years, most recently with helping their students vote in the past general election. Please join me in congratulating the Colorado School for Deaf and Blind, School for the Blind, for progressing the ADA in the Pikes Peak region for the blind and low vision community. Next, I'd like to call Lori Jarvis, Executive Director at the Colorado Springs affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, probably better known to most of you as NAMI. NAMI helps build better lives for people affected by mental illness, and our NAMI affiliate in Colorado Springs has spearheaded Mental Health Begins With Me, in partnership with Food for Thought and others. This campaign engaged over 500 citizens in Colorado Springs in spreading awareness and education about mental health issues. As a result of community dialogue, grassroots solutions were developed, resulting in the expansion of mental health first aid, several mental health summits, and advocacy initiatives to empower people with mental illness and increase their access to mental health care. The Independence Center proudly partnered with NAMI in these efforts to reduce stigma and increase access to resources. Today, the Independence Center is working with NAMI to improve the way the faith-based communities support people with mental illness. NAMI is honored today for advancing the Americans with Disabilities Act in the Pikes Peak region for people with mental health disabilities. One more. For the final award, I would like to call to the stage Lisa Austin, Senior Vice President at the YMCA of the Pikes Peak region. The YMCA has shown a desire to advance the mission of the Americans with Disabilities Act in a way that few organizations have been willing to do. They are committed to continuously improving accessibility in all of their facilities. And in nearly real time, the YMCA has corrected accessibility-related issues as they arise. Lisa has been a central figure in this effort. After nearly having a collision with another gym user walking up on an L-shaped ramp with a blind corner, the Independence Center's Tim Ashley approached the YMCA about the issue. Within 2 days, the YMCA had installed corner mirrors to allow people using wheelchairs to see around the corner. Also, the YMCA had inspectors in the Independence Center examine all of their Colorado Springs facilities to identify possible areas for improvement in ADA accessibility. The Jet Wing YMCA even hosted a disability awareness session by the Independence Center for all their staff. Individually, these acts show a willingness to help, but together they show a pattern of commitment to people with disabilities that you don't see every day. Thank you to the YMCA for their dedication to people with physical disabilities and for extending that to all types of disabilities. Let's give our applause for Lisa. Thanks, folks, for coming out today and recognizing the efforts of these award winners and the great organization that is the Independence Center.
Mayor Stubbs, before you leave, I think I have to get somewhere here to be heard. I just want to say thank you for all that you've done.
Get the Kleenex out.
Thank you, I needed that. You know, it takes leadership. Prior to you being in this position, we didn't get very far with the ADA and with making these changes. And it takes you and City Council and the budget to make this happen. The curb cuts, the sidewalks are fabulous. Thank you.
Folks, let's make sure that the voters of Colorado Springs understand that that's an investment that they've made also.
Thank you so much. Well, that was totally off script, but thank you for being here and honoring us and honoring our awardees. And thanks again for the great work you do. Well, you've heard some amazing stories today. If you'd like to hear more stories or like to help us create more stories, there are several ways to get connected. You can like us on Facebook. You can tweet with us on Twitter, contact us about volunteering, or sign up for our newsletter. So please fill out the contact form on the envelope at your seat. And then we can stay in touch. If you'd like to make a monetary donation towards creating independence for people with disabilities, there's a spot for that on the envelope as well. After the event, please take the envelope to one of the registration tables out front and exchange it for your gift bag. Again, thank you all for being here, and thank you for helping us create independence for people with disabilities.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Mayor Southers, and everyone for being here. And thanks to all our participants today. And congratulations to our award winners. Most of all, the Independence Center wants to thank everyone who's taken the time to join us here today. Let's all recommit ourselves to upholding the Americans with Disabilities Act and supporting the continued advancement of the ADA in the Pikes Peak region. Now, at this time, please check the back of your program. If there's a puffy, smiley face sticker on the back of your program, you're the lucky winner of our table's centerpiece to take home with you today. Good luck. Don't forget to turn in your envelope at the registration tables near the front of the building and pick up your gift bags courtesy of our sponsors. We hope to see you all next year at the Independence Center's 4th annual ADA Celebration Luncheon. We already have the date, July 26, 2018. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.